Am I gonna lie, Shad? Run the song back. I'm back in my name. Run the fucking song back, Shadrach.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Welcome back. This is episode 2 of A Very Distant Perspective. Chilling with Zay again.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm cooling it. And we're going to talk about his pottery collection that he recently started. He's also running like 2K on the TV, so we're tapped into that too.
All-time Lakers versus current OKC.
You got here like 6 pieces. I remember you started this a few months ago, and when you were starting, I remember you said it's your first collection ever. You've been doing pottery for a long time though. Why start the collection now? Like, what really motivated you?
I think when I was coming up with the ideas of the collection, I was kind of like, basically everything started from like summer basically, where just a lot of shit happened this summer, where it was just like, I need to somehow, I guess, do something about it in a way. Like make pieces, talking about what like, how I feel about shit this summer, as well as like, I just turned 20, so it was kind of like a end of the teen years type collection. You know, coming of age almost, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I mean, just turning 20, like how far into doing pottery, I guess, did you realize that this was something that you really wanted to like get into more, if that makes sense? Like,
I would say probably like
when did this become serious for you?
probably like senior year of high school or like junior year, creating college applications. I think that was a big moment of my life where I was like, you know, thinking about what I really wanted to do. And like, at the time, I didn't really have much like going on outside of pottery. And then it was like the things that I did like, I wasn't sure that like I really wanted to do it like full time or like for the rest of my life. Pottery was one of those things where it was like, it's always gonna remain there for me no matter what I go through, no matter what happens. So it's something like that where it's like, I was like, I'd rather do this full time. I feel like an emotional connection to it. And like, it would be really cool for me to like go all the way, you know? Applying, I was gonna apply to art school, but I chose to do like practical route instead, but.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess like there's a lot that went into this collection that I'm a little bit like curious about, cause like, I remember last time we were talking about like functional versus just like artistic pottery and the differences between that, but like, what I see here is like a very like artistic collection. These aren't like functional pieces per se.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're designing artistic pieces, there's a lot of like your story that goes into it, a lot of experiences I'm sure behind these. You have some poems you also give me as well. So I guess like take me through the journey. Like when someone's experiencing your collection, like how do they walk through it? What do you want them to experience?
I think like the overarching idea with the collection was a take on like the Greek myth or story of Narcissus and Echo. So that in of itself kind of like informed how I created the pieces, and like, cause there's definitely a story within the actual collection, going from like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, whatever. But like, so stuff like that kind of informed me. What is somebody gonna feel when they look at the collection, and what are they gonna feel as they move from piece to piece, you know? So I think that like, with this specifically, there are definitely pieces I want people to take a look at more versus like pieces that are more for like me versus like for the viewer, I guess.
Okay. So like, I mean, I'm looking at them, I'm starting out over like here, I guess, so my eyes are like going over too. And I do remember seeing this like up close. I remember like you telling me about all the tentacles that you put into it and all those like intricate parts. What was the process like of designing this from start to finish though? Because the way I understand of how you made this piece, a lot of it was also like afterthought and integrating, like, oh, like maybe I could turn this into this later on, but you didn't have that vision starting out.
Yeah.
Or how much of it did you have starting out, I suppose?
For this, honestly, I think I had like a really strong image of like what the piece kind of represented itself. But as like you said, like as I was making stuff, you know, certain things pieces broke off of it, and I was just going with the flow eventually. I think I had the tentacles at least mapped out. I knew I wanted to do something like that. And then past that, it was just like, more so as I worked on it, what could I do? Like I know with this piece specifically, there's like a big, there's a big emphasis on texture. And that was an afterthought for me, honestly. But like stuff like that, so I don't know. Sometimes you learn to like do so. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I had a good like just the tentacles, not the texture stuff.
I guess like I'm curious because you're relating this to this larger story, the narcissist story that you're pulling from, and I guess like was that something that you started with, like, oh, like I'm trying to tell a story, here's how I'm going to do it through pottery, or was it like I'm going to make these pieces and now this actually reminds me of this story and I'm going to relate it back?
I think the thing with the myth that spoke to me was that like the myth is about like Narcissus, where he's like walking through a forest and kind of like eventually at the end he comes to a lake and he sees himself, and he's so beautiful that he's enamored with himself, and he's basically stuck at the edge of the lake and he dies from starvation. And like I think that overarching idea of like seeing yourself, being stuck with yourself, and like kind of like dying for yourself kind of stood out to me as I made the piece, or as I made the whole collection. I definitely subverted it where like the intro or like the piece itself or the collection itself is talking about, instead of like dying at the lake where he's, you know, enamored with himself, what happens if like we say, you know, he falls in. And then in that sense, I kind of like, because there's two big aspects to the story, or like what the story means to me and how it feels with like how I feel with it. There's the piece about like narcissism, where the myth, like we get the word narcissist from that myth essentially. And then there's the piece about like looking in the lake. And that is the piece that I added into the story for me. Cause like,
what does that signify? What does looking into the lake signify?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, with like this being like a coming of age type of thing for me almost, is that like this entire collection is about reflection and almost like looking inwards at oneself. And that's kind of like what I tied to the lake, because like if you look at a body of water, you're gonna see a mirror image. And I think what's like super cool about it is that earlier in the semester I was writing, and I wrote a lot, poems and whatnot for like this collection. I remember specifically I wrote like the thing about like looking at like water or something, or like a lake when you're like looking for a reflection, is that your reflection is so easily distorted by like movement within the lake, you know? So like that themes of those and like letting things cloud your judgment and whatnot is kind of like, that's what I was going for with the reflection aspect.
Yeah.
I think that personally, as like bringing it back to the collection itself, this like, and the whole like, you know, I think Narcissus fell in is kind of like saying, okay, you would only fall in to like go after your reflection and, you know, go after who you are. So from that kind of spawned the idea that like he's looking for his reflection almost. So it's like, you know,
he's like grasping after it, trying to chase it.
Trying to chase it and like figure out like who he is essentially. Because like even with pottery, like when I like back in high school when I was like really trying to figure it out, it's like that's what that is what this conversation kind of stemmed from. It's like, as I do pottery, is this who I want to be versus like, is something else who I want to be, and like figuring that out. So like that is like kind of like the overarching theme. So it's like reflection in that sense. But then the narcissist part where I got from it is like kind of thinking of, you know, what does a narcissist mean? And like the reason why I specifically thought of this story was because I remember having a conversation with a family member. This conversation happened many times, but basically like the family member, she just told me like she felt as though I was a narcissist, essentially. And so stemming from like that kind of placement and like seeing myself through that kind of lens is what I kind of wanted to do, and like inspect every quote unquote flaw within myself.
You know, that's interesting because like I do feel like doing a little, like trying pottery that day with you and like throwing was something that was like, in a way, like you're doing an action or you're doing some kind of a creative hobby that will reveal the flaws that you have in a way. Because like whether like my hand isn't steady enough, the pottery that I'm throwing is gonna have some wobbles in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I guess like here you've put together this collection that like looks very intentional, but I suppose you see your flaws in some of this work too, I suppose.
Yeah.
And does that pull into that like feeling of like what you were trying to do with the collection of like making something that allowed you to experience that narcissistic perspective and yet at the same time reveal the flaws in your work that you were doing?
Yeah. I think the first part that you mentioned with like pottery being so like revealing of one's like what you do and like what you fuck up on. Started from that, like there are absolutely like when I look at these pieces, there are things where I'm like I could have done that better. I could have, done this a little better. One of the pieces literally is kind of came from accident. The third piece is like when I was trying to do something different with like a more hollowed form or like a more complete form, and it literally kind of like collapsed on me. But like the idea with that piece, which like we can get into later, is like kind of all about that. But so like for sure there are like flaws that I see with each of the pieces, and like that kind of does add to it, where it's like, because I'm putting myself under the magnifying glass, it's like I'm looking at all the flaws within my character. And like I think most of the pieces kind of represent that.
And I think it's just bizarre though, because when I look at it, like I'm not like calling out all the flaws in here, like I can't tell, right? I have no clue. But and like I think to most people it looks very intentional to some degree of like, okay, like you're like making these curves and these hollows and these shapes in specific places, and yet like it's impossible for me to tell which ones were intentional by you and which ones were just like mess ups.
No, it's definitely weird on that front. I think that in terms of intentional versus accidental, I think that in some cases, like I have throwaways specifically for this. Like there are two pieces that like I wanted to be something, and then like just ended up not being what I wanted to. And like sometimes you do just gotta like fully just say no and then start back again. But like there is a threshold where like you can keep fucking up until like the piece no longer matches what you want it to be. But yeah, I think like even accidents have a little bit of intentionality with them, honestly.
So say more.
I think that like, for example, that second piece with all the textures around like the edges and everything, I think there and working on that, I allowed myself to be a little bit more careless when I was making the piece. Cause like, it's like those edges, for example, they're supposed to be fringed. They're supposed to look beat up and whatnot. And like, if I fuck up, that just adds to it a little bit more. Or like even the third piece, like I said, even though that initial accident was not what I wanted, I realized like that piece itself kind of represents, and the things that it does represent kind of like makes it 10 times better to have those accidents in there.
Yeah. Are there things that you felt like you wanted to do with this collection that you weren't able to do because of like the resources that you had?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. If I could probably make this into like 7 pieces. Absolutely, like easy.
Or like, were there specific things with each piece that you would have wanted to do?
Number one for all of them is size. Just because like dealing with school and then this like on the side, like I just didn't have the time. But like size for sure, I probably would have made each of them 2 times bigger. But I think a specific piece that I really wish I could have, probably the 4th piece. Let's Dance Until Sunday. That piece, like I feel like I could have done a lot more with like better materials in the studio. But you know, you see the studio, it's like it's like very entry level, very not much, like not many things to actually work on. And I think the hand built piece, which is the last one, the hand built piece definitely could have been like, we have no hand building materials in the studio, so.
I really do like that like hand built piece at the end, because like that's something we never did together, the hand building. Yeah. But like
it was also something new for me, honestly, because for me it was like, how I put it, I've never done I have done hand building to a way bigger size, but not with as much intentionality. I think when I throw pieces, even when I throw the shape, I have a specific like need for them or like a vision for the shape. And so like when you're hand building, you kind of don't have that vision, I guess, or like at least for me, because maybe it's because like I just throw all the time instead of hand building. So like in of itself, like that piece was very much not accidental, but it was like, it was new for me. It was like dipping my feet into the water almost. But yeah.
So like you like have named these pieces. You're also doing like some writing as well associated with the pieces. Like where in the process does this come in, and how do you see the poems and things that you've written tying into the greater story that you're trying to tell?
Yeah, I think for the poems and the stories, so like each piece specifically has a poem, and then like in some cases they have graphic design or like mixed media on attached, where it's like even audios. I think that the piece itself is supposed to speak for itself, but at the same time it's kind of like the poem and the audios and the images kind of give you like context to it.
Ambiance.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all kind of designed to like be like a movie scene almost, where like transport you to that vibe. So like I know the first piece, titled Me, the poem for that specifically, it starts off with like the sense where you're like looking at the water almost, and like you're kind of like finally kind of getting, you finally jump in essentially. Like the audio for the piece is like you hear ambiance of a forest, and then out of nowhere you hear a splash, which is like the guy falling in essentially, or me, I guess in this case, falling in. And the poem, I'm pretty sure, it talks about like giving the viewer, like if you read the poem, it's almost as if like the person in the poem is talking to you. And maybe it's that like the audio plus the images plus the poem itself and then the piece itself, it kind of like, at least to me, transports me to a certain vibe or like to a scene. So like that first piece is like I said, you are, maybe you're not watching the person, but you kind of are the person jumping in. And like, it's kind of like placing the viewer within my mind, essentially. So like, I mean, maybe from now on, I'll say like, not the person, but like me. So like, yeah. So first piece is me jumping into the water, getting ready to like look for myself, essentially.
Wait, can you like, because I have the poems up here, but like,
Yeah.
and I'm using it to reference, so I'll take those back after.
Yeah. So like, for example, I say, let go, my child, reach out, place your faith in his hands. We watch from afar how you stumble through the fog. He was never truly there. So like, that poem kind of starts off as like putting you in the position, obviously you're a child. Like, in this case, you're new, and like in some cases for me, it's like, I'm young. Like, I call this a coming of age like collection, but at the same time, like I have a long way to go, you know? So it's like, in a sense, I'm kind of like still a newborn, emotionally, I guess. But as for the rest of like the words, it's like how you stumble through the fog, that adds to it. Cause it's like, almost as if like, you know, when you can't see or when it's like super dark, you're just feeling around, you're just searching for that one thing. So like, yeah, and at that point, you're just first beginning to search for yourself and who you are, essentially. Yeah.
So I'm like, I guess I'm trying to, in my head, frame or imagine what you're seeing too. Because I guess like that is somewhat of an end goal of some art, that like you're able to be transported to the place that the artist is in as well. And like, while I don't have this like exact picture of probably like me going in through the fog and like falling into the water, like that's something that I can imagine to some degree. How do you see that being like transported, or how do you see that being portrayed through the actual piece? Like,
yeah, I think this is where like the disconnect of like seeing the piece online versus like being like having it right there.
Yeah.
But like essentially the textures of the piece, honestly the whole piece itself is like alien almost. So it's like in that way, in that sense where like the piece is alien, so is the world kind of alien to you when like you know, most people's first experiences with anything happen within like when they're first 25 years, you know? So it's like, all of this is new to me. I don't really know what it is or like what I'm doing in this world, but like, I'm trying to search for that. So it's like, when you touch the piece itself and like you feel like these kind of weird textures, it's like, okay, I don't know what that is essentially, but I can sense that like, I want to know more. And like, even like, the tentacles, they look alien in and of itself, like where it's like, you see a piece and then like out of nowhere, it's kind of like, you know, like the Spider-Man symbiote?
Yeah.
Where it's like that almost, yeah. So it's like, that in and of itself, like that's the alien coming out of the piece. So like, maybe the alien itself is like infecting the pottery. Cause like, there are a lot of ideas going into like each piece, and like, I guess like I could really delve into like, why I did certain things. Like, so like I said, with this like kind of alien structure I got going on, the texture itself is part of that alien. And like I said, it's like a symbiote kind of infecting the piece itself. So it's like going throughout the piece and like taking over more and more. And I guess one thing you like never realize when you're in the middle of making these type of things, it's like, you're not really, your brain might not be like in tune with like how you feel emotionally, but like your hands are, at least for me, like my hands are.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's like, even like looking at this now, it's like, okay, like I was obviously like feeling a certain type of way when I made this. So it's like, maybe speaking towards like mental state, I guess like I was just really, really confused at the beginning of like this semester or like this summer, I guess, where just like going in, everything's new to me, everything like just figuring everything out, I guess, yeah.
I really just wanted to like get into these textures a little bit.
Yeah,
So like these are, to make these textures, how? How do you do it? Because like, I remember we went back, you like painted on some glaze at some point, but is that this?
No, the glaze was just the color, but the texture itself, like you take different tools and like whether it's like scratching it or like carving away at it, that's how I made like the smaller ones. The bigger grooves, That's like, I literally just kind of like pinched in with my thumb where those, and like if you feel the inside, at some points, you'll feel the indent and like you'll feel kind of like where my thumb was going, trying to like make those marks. But yeah, so like out external factors, nothing to do with like the actual goods.
Yeah, I feel like this is, yeah, I really do like the textures a lot. Were you attempting to, like, I guess draw these like grooves and anything in any particular pattern, or had you planned out what you wanted that to look like, or was it kind of just like intuition, following what you felt?
I think same thing as like, you know, initial vision, but like no specific roadmap.
I get you.
I was just kind of placing shit, like wherever my hand went, like I just went, you know? And like there's no specific like pattern to it at all. It's just all kind of random.
Yeah, I really do like the colors though that you picked for this as well. It's very
I think
fire.
they really, like the combination came out great.
Like even like the little like accents in there.
Yeah, with the underglaze, that came out great. That's like probably my favorite or like second favorite piece. Favorite probably being like the last one, but this one's a heavy one.
All right, take us through there.
Okay. This is Name Your Price. And this kind of like, this I would say is like the most in your face kind of piece in the collection. I think it talks a lot about, I guess, like substance abuse for me and like my process with that, where it's like, usually like you can, you know, do whatever and like make art and whatnot. For me, I would say like definitely at first it starts to be like a good thing, but then it kind of like turns into like one of those things where it's like it takes more away than it is giving, you know? So like I can even talk about the poem as well, but like the poem itself, how much does your happiness cost? Take a trip to find yourself, just for him to fade away. Burn away your despair, rolled in countless desires, shed the wings of obligation for a single dose of freedom. Memory doesn't serve you well, how much does your happiness cost? And like, that right there is kind of like, you know what I was really inspired by to make this piece specifically? I watched Requiem for a Dream. And that's like the premier like anti-drug movie. But like,
I don't think I've seen it. Maybe I'll add it.
it's a really good movie.
Okay.
But like, I guess like it really put into perspective how I felt about drug use before, and then how like after watching that movie it was kind of like, yeah, I can feel good off of it, but then it just turns into like, how much, like what am I willing to give up to feel that good, you know? So I think the poem itself is also kind of acknowledging that, where it's like, how much does your happiness cost? Is like, what are you willing to do to keep that high going? And like, throughout the poem, I talk about different ways that like, I find myself getting high, where it's like taking trips, you know, smoking, burning away your despair, shedding wings for a single dose. So it's like, especially during the summertime where like it was really bad, where it's like just chasing a constant high or like multiple benders or whatever. So I think that piece is definitely like taking a time, definitely within like the reflection part, where it's like look at yourself in the mirror real quick and like, what are you willing to do to chase the high, to be happy, and like, is that worth it for you in the long run?
Yeah. I mean, that's good, like, introspection. I feel like that's huge of, like, everything has its cost, everything has consequences. And I like, props to you for doing the introspection and, like, thinking about it, because, like, a lot of people don't. I think that, like, how you see that turning into your art is interesting, and the interplay that it has between, like, the stuff that you're making and the life that you're living, because I guess like you've come to a place where like maybe it does benefit you some way to like engage with substances, but also at the same time, I guess you've realized that like it has some kind of toll on your ability to pursue your life in the way that you do want to, or like create art in the way that you do want to.
Yeah.
And I guess like, questions are like, given that like, you know, there is a little bit of like a cost to everything, like how does that impact the way that you see yourself doing art in the future?
I think it's just kind of coming, this piece in it like is also like helping me come to terms with like how I see my art. And like, I've always thought of like the ideas that I have and like, the visions that I have for like my art as like kind of like a byproduct of like my usage. But I think with this piece, I'm also coming to terms with the fact that I can have these visions and like have like the same creativity without all of that. In a sense, it's kind of like a big red flag in the middle of like my brain saying like, that's what this piece is. It's like, you know, every time like you think of doing this or you want it or you do something like this, it's like, think about like how much does your happiness cost? Like, is it worth it in the long run? But yeah, I think one thing to note, and I think with all of these pieces, is that like, while there is like an ending to the journey, and like, I still kind of feel each piece at like consistently, you know? It's like, it's not like I've left this behind, or like now that I've made it, I've left it behind. It's kind of like acknowledging something that's currently a part of me. But yeah, I mean, we'll see as we like continue through.
I really do like this black. It's like super rich.
Is
this even a black or is this a blue?
It's like a deep blue. It's like a deep blue green. Like at the top, it's the greenest. But like that specifically was actually a mistake, where I wanted it to be like kind of more like the symbiote, where like it was supposed to have like white drips at like white bubbles at like where the drips are. Yeah,
that would have been cool. I can't lie. Yeah.
And like somehow the glaze chemistry just messed up. But like I guess it kind of still fits almost. Like it doesn't stop me from like disliking it, but like it still fits.
When you make a piece of pottery, is it important for the viewer, whoever, like let's say you sell this one day and I have this in my home or something, like is it important that they take away the story that you're putting into this? Like, do you want them to understand the weight that this carries to you, or does it not really matter? Can they just like, that's cool? Like,
yeah. I mean, if you're paying like $1 million for it, like you take away whatever you want. No, I think it's important if you're consuming art, like not even just mine. I think it's important if you like buy something that's artistic or has creative sense to it, that like you kind of understand why you're buying it, whether it's like it has a connection to you or you just resonate with what the piece is saying. So like if I were to give that away or like sell it, I would hope that the person understands kind of like what it means to me. But like at the same time, and we've talked about this in the other pod, where it's like how I feel about art is like it isn't just me who I make, because like if I wanted to, I can make pieces about myself all day, you know. But at the same time, I want to also create something that if someone were to buy it, it's because they had a calling to it, you know, like it spoke to them specifically. And honestly, thinking about it like that, it kind of adds a little mini layer to like the whole reflection, where it's like is it like a two-way mirror, where it's like one side is like I'm giving myself up to you as well as, and like you're receiving that, but you're also taking away things about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like people probably interpret art differently just depending on who you are.
Yeah.
But I do think it is powerful if you are able to like communicate with the artist through their artwork. And like if I can like having, and I guess what's tricky for me a lot of times when I interact with art is we don't have the artist talking about their art. Like, I don't know what
you don't have like a big
intended,
like billboard saying like this is what I meant, you know.
Exactly, but it's like you like hearing about your story. It's like now this gives this piece so much more dimensionality. Like it really makes a lot more sense in my head, and I think that like I would love to see art engaged with more this way as well. But yeah, I mean, are you gonna be like sad when you like let this go? Because like this is like I guess all these pieces seem like they're some reflection of some part of yourself that you've manifested
They're all
into physical form.
I think, well, first to your point about like everybody being different, like we all run at different frequencies, you know. So it's like if someone were to come up to me if they bought that and they were like, you know, this spoke to me because I went through the same thing, blah blah blah, like that would be super touching. But it would also be touching like if someone were to come up to me and say like, you know, this isn't what you wanted for the piece, but this kind of like helps me think about like, you know, any other random thing, I guess, that just is special to them. I'll still feel touched because it's like, I'm glad that like even some part of me was able to inspire or like evoke an emotion within you, you know? Because like in a way that's kind of like two people themselves connecting. And like you can have physical connection and like everyday connection where it's like small talk or whatever, but like this is one of the ways, if it like, I want it to be one of the ways to get to know somebody on a deeper connection almost.
And then the poem that goes with this again, like, I think it's tricky. I feel like we don't often engage with art in multiple forms, like the same piece of art in multiple forms, and yet hearing you talk about this piece, reading your poem, seeing the piece, touching the piece, all adds to my ability to interpret what it is that you had in mind, really. And yet, like, most of the times, like, this might just be on the shelf by itself.
It's just gonna be that. Honestly, I think of it like, well, first, the mixed media idea was super new for me. I think that was probably the most challenging part of like this whole process, because like I can make the pots and like I can know what I feel when I make the pots, but like you said, it's like it's just gonna be the pots. I kind of wanted to add more to that, and like finding different modes to do that in was the most challenging. Like it's like learning how to ride a bicycle with like if you have no legs, I guess. Like
people do it, I'm sure.
or like learning to write with your other hand. You know, you gotta work that muscle a little bit more. And like shout out to Emmett. That's the best friend from back home, but he helped me a lot with the poems, especially because like I got into poetry this summer because I read like this poem anthology. And like, as like I wrote more, I liked writing it, but eventually I was like, I'm never gonna know if they're good until like somebody else reads them, you know? So like I sent a bunch of poems, a bunch of these poems kind of just cycling through like what I wanted to communicate and like how I communicated, and like definitely gave me some great help with that. It's just being like somebody, like the pre-test before like actually releasing it, you know?
Because like, I mean, like poetry is a completely different bag.
Yeah. Like it was actually different because like there's so many like layers, and like I think what I not dislike, but like what I will have to acknowledge is that like it's not like I started off small with like, you know, writing like the fundamentals of every type of poetry. I kind of just jumped in. Like it was just like, you know, I'm gonna just start writing shit. Like,
But I think that's like unique that like you're writing for a project that you're doing. You're trying to communicate everything that you're feeling, and you're reaching for whatever ways that you can do that. Like pottery comes naturally to you, or like you've been doing pottery for a long time, so that's obvious. But there's, I guess, leftover ways that you still wanted to communicate, which I guess you gravitated to the poetry and like those other forms for everything else. I guess like, I know you do some like drawing as well, some like sketching. Where does that play into this like multimedia, and is that something you've ever wanted to like incorporate alongside your vision of how you present the work?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, an exhibit would be like all the pieces with like the poetry as like the descriptions, and then like the pictures on the walls around it. I think like there's definitely a hierarchy with like how I'm communicating my ideas and my emotions. Yeah, there's definitely a hierarchy. The pottery's first and foremost, then the poems, and then it's like the images and the audios. Like you don't necessarily need the images and the audios, but it's kind of like a cool little thing to get like, oh, this is what he means by this specifically, or like the audios I think more so because like there's definitely something to be said about like auditory like experience because like there are like we all know there are sounds that like they have in movies that like make it really sound like scary or like really make you feel like joyous, you know? So it's like stuff like that is like I definitely thought of and like how to low-key like curate it. Like imagine if it was like VR and like that you're seeing the piece and like you're hearing the audio. That would probably be ideal actually. Like that's probably the best case scenario where like as you're walking through the exhibit, you're hearing the audio with the piece, and then like you're also being able to see on the side like the images. But like back to your like question, like the images were definitely like third on the list, but they still matter. They're like little Easter eggs.
Coming soon with that exhibit, like we'll figure out how to make that work.
Yeah. We have to one day.
I do know there's like a podcaster I chatted with recently that was like super into understanding how to essentially do podcasting, but in a space like as you move from location to location, like what you're hearing changes. And the podcaster had experimented with this using like FM radio starting out. So like you would like walk from location to location and the frequency that you pick up changes, and it talks about something specific.
That's actually insane.
I'll talk to her.
No, we gotta set that up.
Yeah, but I mean, piece 3, like bring me into this, because like this is a bit, your pieces are interesting to me too, because you play with, I guess, just artwork on the piece. Like the piece is a canvas, and yet like it's also pottery. Like are you like, I hope like all of this is captured clearly.
If not, it'll be on the website.
Be on the website.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of like details in these pieces that I think like are interesting, because I guess you make the piece and then you're like sketching, drawing, carving.
I think honestly, I low-key had the most, like this is probably one of the more fun pieces I had like doing, like making. And like how you phrase that was kind of interesting because I've never thought of it like that, you know, because like a lot of the time I am just like fucking around with the actual clay, but like even after the fact with glaze or whatever, like it is like kind of like a canvas, and like even after the piece was glazed, like this is spray paint, so it's like even on top of that I'm spray painting it, and like I'm adding texture to the spray paint almost. So like honestly it's like a canvas cube, a tesseract canvas, because like canvas within a canvas.
I feel like when I think about like early forms of pottery that I know, like the Egyptians were like making like huge vases and then like putting like hieroglyphics in the base and all kinds
Egyptians,
of things.
Greeks, Romans.
So I think like to some degree like pottery has been a form of like 3-dimensional art that like you could do this like canvassing on pottery. So but no, I definitely like it a lot. Like it adds like a tactile layer to it of like you're not just like seeing the piece, but you're also like feeling it.
I think with a lot of like professional potters or like people who like show in exhibits, it's very much like you see and don't touch, and like it is glassware, but like I like when like I encourage people to like pick up my pieces and like feel them. Cause like, I think that adds another layer if you like can actually feel what I'm feeling or like, you know, like you said, rub your hands around it and like see like all the different textures and like, you know, I think these specific textures, so about this piece, so this piece is the interlude piece. And like, I could talk for hours about like this collection and like how I wanted it to be like an album almost, but this is kind of like the midway piece. And it deals, this specific, which is like with Echo's interlude, it deals specifically with kind of like the other half of that narcissist story where it's like, while he's looking at himself, there's a nymph in the forest that's constantly saying his name over and over again. And like, because she like loses her duties of like devoting to the goddess or whatever, I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. She's like condemned to only say his name for the rest of her life. And that's where we get like Echo from. Because like her name was Echo and she just forever just said his name. But what I wanted to get from this piece was essentially kind of like the feeling of like having people call out to you, you know, but it's your name, so kind of like adding to that selfish aspect. So going back to what I said about being called a narcissist, that's kind of like saying, you know, what if like instead of like rejecting that, you like embrace that, you know? And like, what if like you just purely acted out of pleasure and like did whatever the fuck you want? And like, I think with this piece, the regret I have most is definitely like the glaze didn't take as well as I wanted to. But the piece is kind of supposed to represent like a party that's just like constantly going no matter what happens. I was really heavily inspired by Shay's album, Say So. Oh my gosh. That is like, in of itself, I guess, the entire vibe. Like, if you listen to that album front to back, that is this piece. Like, when I was making this, I had that album on me. But it's kind of like embracing, like I said, hedonism and like the pleasures and like just doing whatever you want. And I think because I lacked the glaze like capabilities that I really wanted it to, I poured a lot into the poem. And the poem goes basically, keep calling out, I revel in your shouts, drunk on vice, high on desire. It's my party and I'll die if I want to. Keep calling out, I won't answer. You call me by that name, but he isn't me, nor am I. So like, I got really like layered with this part of the project because like the keep calling out, that in of itself is an echo. It's the poem is two parts, and it's basically two ways you can take on that like echo calling you narcissist, essentially. So the first part is embrace that, you know, like I'm going crazy. Like I said, like the last line of that first stanza, that's a song in the thing where it's like, in the album where it's my party and I'll die if I want to. That's the essential, that's basically the vibe of the piece where it's like, I'll do whatever I want and like, if I break, if I have flaws, like, it's fine. Like, cause it's my party, you know? But yeah, that's the first part. And then the second half of that poem kind of leads us into like the second half of the collection, which is like more so a little bit more chill. But the second half is basically rejecting that and saying like, you know, I'm not a narcissist, I can be better than that. And, you know, like that's not who I am and I won't let that define.
You snap it.
Bro, I'm telling you, I must have like stayed up so many nights just thinking about like this type of stuff. Because like, I remember this was probably one of the last pieces I had to actually design or like in my brain. Like, cause before like I had like most of the other pieces mapped out. For this one, I was just so confused. And then I remember specifically, I was just listening to this album and I was like, you know what, like, I really feel this album. Like, this is like what I want this piece to be. And essentially just like doing whatever the fuck I want. Like, and I think during the time when I was making this, I was on I was on do whatever the fuck I want type of time, basically. Like I did not care about anything else except for like doing what made me happy.
Now, did you make these pieces in sequential order as we're talking through them, or was this jumbled? Like, did you?
It was definitely jumbled around. I think. As for like, I definitely had like I said, I had a vision for like the story arc or like the journey that it's taking you in. Mm-hmm. But, and that's where like what I said earlier kind of comes into play, where it's like, it's not like I'm physically also going through this journey, but it's like, I'm experiencing, I can like yesterday, I can feel like this, where it's like, I can do whatever the fuck I want, but then another day I can feel like completely alien. Mm. It was just more so like taking all of my thoughts and then like putting them in a line. But yeah, to answer your question, this wasn't like in order, but it didn't really need to be made in order because it's not like I was actively picking apart different parts of myself at different times. Yeah.
You know, because I like the like reflective nature of the collection, like that beginning part of like, okay, like maybe I am a narcissist, and then that like reflection back of like, okay, maybe I can do better, and like seeing how that all came out, even though you are doing it all at different times, like maybe you made one piece before the next and it wasn't all in that order, and yet at the end you're able to have some kind of a collection that has a perfect reflection of itself on both sides and displays a whole picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome work.
I think that was kind of like, I think that's like low-key inadvertently like the point almost. Cause like one thing like with doing mindfulness and like practicing mindfulness, doing therapy and like having like different ways to like cope over certain things, you realize it's not like, you know, you just get better like that. It's kind of like, you're gonna feel worse on some days and you're gonna feel better on some days, you know? And there are some days where it's like you feel like you really can be better, and then there are other days where it's like you feel like a shitty person. And I think just being able to like come back and then look at that journey as a whole, that's when it starts to be like, it's not that it's like one day you randomly got better, but it's like over time you see that you felt less shitty until the point where like you strop, you know? So like maybe the first piece is like -3 and then the last piece is like 3, where it's like, you know, you're in the negatives, but like now you're trying to be better and better.
Okay, I rock with it. Yeah. That's fine. Speaking of fire, I guess we're getting into piece 4.
Yes.
Tell me about this name and then like.
Let's Dance Until Sunday. This is another piece that like really goes into like subtle meanings, and there's a lot of different layers of just to look at this piece from. But yeah, I'll read the poem as well. But essentially, I think of what awaits me in the quiet of the forest, but I remember you and our dance continues. It frees me from burden, but not my convictions. The fire keeps them away, but prying eyes linger. What will become of me, of us, when this is through? I try not to dwell. We dance through the night. So I think the initial idea behind this piece was my relationship with music, and definitely where like the feeling of like just being alone and like, you know, the idea of dancing like nobody's watching. Where like if you're in your room and you're listening to music and it's a good song, like you can dance, you know. So like it's done from that originally, and then it turned into kind of like the recognition of like music being like my safe place, essentially. And kind of like leaning on that. The title and like what the poem stands for kind of adds the effect of like, I was grown up Christian, and I was grown up Catholic, and like in Christianity obviously you go to church on Sundays, and that's kind of like, I guess, seen as the rest day, or like the day to praise God essentially, and like that kind of adds the whole let's dance until Sunday as like music being my safe place. kind of taking like, okay, you see all these bad things happening around you, or like you feel like a certain type of way, and you feel like this sort of emotion, but it's like, you know, utilize the music, vibe out until you can reach salvation, essentially. And there's a line in the poem where it's like, the fire lights your face or something. And it's essentially like the person that you're talking to in that situation is not necessarily like anybody, but it's more so like the idea of like the music, you know? So like you're kind of dancing with the music, and dancing with the music, it helps you ignore the prying eyes or like the thoughts, you know, or like the convictions that you have about yourself. And like, basically you're utilizing that music to keep it away and like keep a clear conscience, because like, I think that's probably one of the first steps of like reflection, or like even trying to like be better, in the sense where it's like, you have to understand that there are like thoughts aren't gonna go away, and like you just need to understand that like find the thing that makes you safe and like keep utilizing that to like until like you don't need it anymore as a crutch.
That's fair. And you feel like music is that thing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I listen to a lot of fucking music. I think last year I had like a third of my year just listening to music from Spotify rap. And like this year was like even worse.
How many minutes is that?
Like 150K. I think I had like 190K this year, which is like insane.
Just like leave it playing overnight.
Like no, not like sometimes I'll go to sleep, but like deadass, I spend a lot of time just like I'll be in class and listening to music, which is like bad, but like I just need background sound, I guess, almost. But yeah, in that way, I guess like that in of itself is kind of advice, honestly. Like because almost kind of like substance abuse, like there is a point where like it's good, but then there's a point where it becomes like a crutch, you know? So like in that in of itself, music is kind of a crutch to me. And like,
what do you feel like music does for you that like music sobriety doesn't?
I think like outside of like having background music, I think for me it kind of like, I'm a very hyper person, and like being with like ADHD and all that, like constant thoughts and all, like I think having something to listen to kind of helps, especially when like, I mean honestly all my playlists are bangers. Like I don't like I like all the music I play, so like when I can get into a song and like distract myself, that's like kind of what I need almost. But like I think part of this piece, maybe it's saying that like, you know, there is a point in time where like you don't need the music. When are you gonna face your own reflection, you know? So like at the same time, and like I never know like 100% what I want the pieces to be. Like I just figured this out. Like I'm not gonna lie. So like me coming to terms with like, okay, maybe I don't need music this time, to like maybe I need to sit with myself and really think about like the things I'm thinking of and like how to work through that or whatever. So yeah, part of the piece speaks about that as well. I also like fire, but like that's fire. I told you there's a lot of things that go into this piece, but like I think the fire aspect also.
How did you settle on the glazed color?
That was like I wanted it to look more like a flame, and like so like the top was like kind of bluish, but it merged into like something that would turn it like more brownish, as you can see. And I kind of wanted it to be like kind of like a licking fire with like the flames licking out or whatever. The reason why I chose fire is because like to me, and I think this also says this says a lot about how I feel about music, or like dance, where it's like, it's kind of primal almost, where like you hear about all these cultures. I don't think there's a single culture on Earth, like in the history of the Earth, that hasn't used some sort of like music, whether it's like, you know, beating on the floor, or like making drums, or like electronic music, or like sonic music that we have today. So like that in of itself is a primal human nature, almost kind of like fire itself is kind of like human. We're the only people we're the only things on Earth to ever like really utilize fire, and like fire is the reason why we're here today. So it's like kind of thinking about like breaking me down, where it's like as a human, fire at my core as well as music at my core. And speaking of like those two things kind of combined. There wasn't much to do on texture with that, but like I definitely wanted to pull apart and like really emphasize those like flame-like qualities. I think if I had more time and better resources, those could have definitely been made into like, it would have looked a lot more like a fire.
I still think it's pretty neat, and I love that like these are like punch outs of like I can sit here and I can imagine what the normal vase looks like if there wasn't all the tentacles and everything's up, and yet like it's really cool that like that is a part of it. Like even like this part here is super fire. It's like
that took me so long to figure out how to do.
I rock with it, and like I even like this too, just like slightly off edge but attached.
No, I think that's probably third favorite. Honestly, like I say like I don't like my pieces every time I finish them. I think it's only because like I just know how much better they can be, and that definitely says a lot about like I'm a perfectionist when it comes to these. But like when I do like look at it, or like I hear someone say what they like about it, it like kind of brings me back to realize, you know, like I was still able to do like something pretty cool with that piece. So like it's not like I don't like it, I just know how much better I can do.
I think that I've been having this same convo with a lot of creatives recently, that like I think that the more that you do a creative skill, the more aware you are of like the range of, I guess, mess ups that you could have with anything, or like the range of ability that others have. Me as someone that has like done pottery one time and has like seen pottery only through like a couple vases here and there, like I don't have that much of like a knowledge of the range of ability that like people have with pottery. So it's like I'm sitting here like, okay, like I can't do this and this is pretty fire. But at the same time, it's like, you're in your head and you're thinking about everything that like the best potters in the world can't do. But I mean, you've also only been doing pottery for like how many years? Like 6 years. So you got like,
it's an old sport.
You got time. Like
most of my pottery friends are like 50.
Is that like my thing is like this video is going to be a gold mine when you're 50. Like, it just has to be. Like, we're catching, like if they caught like Michelangelo at the start of his career, like that'd be prime video.
I think it's also like, it's funny that you say that, because like I also feel as like a self-proclaimed artist, seeing other people do art like that I don't do, I get the same feeling, because like I'll see someone paint and like I was thinking about this where like not envious, but like I admire people who can like take an idea in their head and just paint it, because like I feel like I have such vivid visions of like what I want art to be, or just even things in general. But like, not that I can't, but it's just like, it's not my medium. So it's like, I mean, I know I can't paint for shit, or like I can't draw for shit, but like, it's like stuff like that. So like, it's funny that I think of that of other people, but I fail to like kind of like think of that with myself almost. Cause like, you're always one person removed, I guess. But like,
it's a good, it's a good like thought, I think, to like take it out of yourself every once in a while and realize like the everyday person likes you. It's better than what they can do. I do think it's super cool too. As some of these, like I had mentioned earlier, that like a lot of these flames are also like pop outs, but some of them are not pop outs too. Like this is just like
one was added.
So like you added that after.
Okay. I think that's kind of more of the randomness and like accidental stuff. Cause like, as I was working on the piece with like the pop outs, there was a point where the clay kind of got stressed a bit. And I was like, okay, if I guys like pull out anything more, there's a chance that it'll start cracking. And then like, so I just decided like, let me add on. There are a couple others that are actually added on, but I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but like, if you were to figure out which ones were like added a little bit on, that would have added on.
This has been intriguing me for a while because of like, there's a gash here, but do these meet up in the middle?
So they originally did.
Okay.
But the thing with the clay is that once I split that part open, one was shorter, so I actually added on to that to make it longer as well. So that's a little bit of like an add. But I think honestly,
did I get them all?
Yeah.
This is like, I feel like this one changed shape a little bit after it's been punched.
That was the first
which I do like.
and I didn't like it. So I did the other ways.
See, this is what I mean. Like, I thought it was okay. Is there any like, I guess, is there any mixture between the functional and aesthetic that you hope to achieve one day? Or like, do you like solely being in like the aesthetic kind of pottery?
No, there definitely is like, well, with functionality, I think to a certain degree, all these pieces can be used functionally for like flowers. But I definitely think, to your question, I would absolutely love a piece that was like completely functional.
Yeah, like an everyday use.
Yeah,
like,
everyday use, like kind of like.
I guess vases are everyday use.
Yeah. Like a plate or a cup or something.
Yeah.
But like, I would also like to have some sort of like artistic side to it. I think that would more so be a lot with like adding on rather than fucking with the piece and like more so about texture and stuff. But like, I think it would definitely be a cool idea. Or like, I already have some ideas about like taking a piece and kind of like cutting it different parts, but like rearranging it as like a puzzle. Almost like a rearranged puzzle that as a piece that is fully. I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out one day.
I like that a lot. That would be cool. I do like the interactiveness of your pottery. Your pottery, like, I enjoy touching it and like engaging with this because like that's something that I think like like you said, you can't do that with most other art.
Yeah, you go to a museum, you can't touch like. Even if obviously, like, don't drop my pieces, but, like, if you, like, anybody could come, just throw them up. Like, I want people to touch the pieces and, like, really get into it. But, yeah, I think that's, like, honestly, that might be what sets me apart.
Someone got to take this and turn it into, like, a fountain one day. Like a life-size fountain.
Life-size, yeah.
Tell me a bit more about this one, like, where does this lie in the greater story of what you're telling and what does it mean to you?
So this one is really special. This probably, honestly, like emotionally means the most to me, but also like I just like it the most. So this is Death is a stone cast. And the poem goes, a stone cast to the water breaks the surface ever so simply, making waves, scattering reflections. The splash so sudden, so the surface returns to calm, but my reflection is gone. You look exactly like your father, they say to me. So this specifically, this was dedicated to my father recently. He passed. And I think dealing with that and like, I guess what a father is, kind of like was the entire gist of like the piece itself. Honestly, like that whole act of like him passing kind of spurred the collection in a way, in addition to like the coming of age stuff. But like, I also think that like having a specific piece for him was like definitely something separate than like, I definitely wanted him to be like, have his own thing rather than just be the overarching thing. I think specifically about like the name and whatnot on the poem. Whenever you throw a stone into water and like it makes that first splash and then the ripple and like everything. The reason like the time that I first thought of this piece specifically was at a family gathering, I think a few weeks after he had passed. And I remember being at the gathering and like it was a christening for my cousin. And it was like, it's a happy moment, you know? So it's like, and obviously even though like some bad stuff happened prior, it's like, you still want to be happy in that moment. And like, I was obviously happy at the christening, but it was like the looming kind of feeling of like my father's death and everything. That was kind of like, I got the idea of like a stone breaking the ripples. Cause almost like what they teach you about, or like what they tell you when like that happens and all that, it's like, you know, you just have to work through like the sadness and whatnot. But like, I don't think I really had anybody tell me like how weird it would be to have like everything kind of snap back to normal. Cause like even then, like I had to come to school after and like go about like classes and like go through everyday life knowing like with that looming feeling. And so in a way, it's kind of like the splash itself of like is the death, and like it did have a big impact, but then all of a sudden it's back to still. And like, so like stuff like that was kind of like what really started like the whole concept for this piece. I think the reason why I kind of wanted it to look like the splash itself is like, in a way, I'm kind of immortalizing that moment. Because the entire piece is talking about how quick and so sudden the splash and the death is. Because like, it's literally like 1 minute you get the call and it's like, they're gone. And then afterwards, you just have to kind of continue like life is the same. And by doing this, I'm kind of immortalizing that moment and like immortalizing it for me. I think there's also pieces about like, there's pieces that go into this about like my relationship with my father and like how like I knew our relationship was and like how people saw our relationship. And like everybody knows like your father's supposed to be like, you know, your role model, you know, like kind of like who you want to be. And like for a bit as a kid, like I was, but like me and my father kind of like not drifted apart, but like we kind of had that like unspoken thing where it's like, you know, we wouldn't really talk too much, but it's like we both like could be around each other and we like enjoyed spending time with each other, even though it wasn't like the deepest conversations.
Why do you think that is? Are you and your dad pretty similar as people?
I would say so, yeah. I think that I got most of his traits out of like the DNA, but I think that we're both like pretty reserved in terms of like how we feel and like how we feel about certain things and like emotions. And I think that because of that, we never had like those outright conversations. But it's almost kind of like the unspokenness of like those conversations kind of strengthen the bonds. And don't get me wrong, like we did have like certain heavy conversations throughout our lives. Like it wasn't just like I didn't talk to him about anything, but it was more so like, it wasn't like, for example, with my mom, like I could talk to her about like, you know, like girls or like going through school troubles or whatever. But like it was just like, I just chill with my dad and he'd be like, you know, I'm chilling with him. I think an important part of like our relationship and how people saw it was that I look very similar to my dad, which is like, even like since I was a kid, my mom used to say like I look exactly like my dad. Like, and like everybody who knows, like if you know my like what my dad looks like, or like even my family members, they all, and that's like the end of the poem where it's like they all say like you look like my father, like I look like my father. And I think that in of itself kind of like, with the idea that your father's supposed to be like who you want to be, it's kind of like playing off of that where like at the end of the poem, you realize that your reflection is gone, and then you immediately say like they look like your father. I'm kind of like equating that to like, in a sense, my father was my reflection to to a lot of people, and honestly to myself as well. But with his death, I kind of lost that reflection, and like in a way, in a way that like I'm finding myself by jumping in. I'm also like forming my own reflection from like, you know, the quote unquote shattering of like, or like the rippling of that previous reflection. So
You should be proud of how you like turned that memory and everything, that the weight that all carries into this piece. I feel like that's.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That was a great way that you even explained it to me. Like, I'm there with you. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, I feel like death is like never easy at all. There's still like so much that like I sit with from the experiences that I've had with that, and like I think that like I do really like that you've immortalized it. It's something that I think with time, like, yeah, we are kind of forced to like move on from things in a way of like, you know, like maybe that big splash happens and then it's still again, and yet things are never exactly the same as they are before.
Yeah.
Yet like your ability to like have a place where you're always able to go back to and feel the weight of that is important, because like, I don't know, for me it's like there's like people that have passed in my life, but it's been time. You know, and now it's like, I can't go back and feel how I felt when I was a kid when that happened.
Yeah.
And yet I might want to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's like, I think exactly what you said, where like you can go back and like feel the feelings that you felt. And like, it's fresh for me as well. It was only like a couple of months ago, but I think that with this specifically, and like kind of how I've been dealing with the grief, has been like, rather than like dwelling on the fact that, you know, the splash did happen or like he did die, kind of like more so relishing in what he was when he was here, almost. So kind of like this piece itself, even though it is even though it is immortalizing the specific moment of death, I think more so not just the death, but also the memory of what was before, and kind of just like a reminder. But yeah, no, absolutely. Like whenever like in the future, I'm sure whenever I feel like I miss my dad, or I'll like come back to this piece and just look at it. It's staying in my room for like ever now. So, but yeah, next piece. Also, it was so hard to do like the outer rings, and like honestly, even outside of like the emotional, that piece was so hard to make, bro. It's like it's all one piece, and it's like a bowl. So like I took a big lump of clay, I threw a bowl, and then within like the thrown bowl, I threw a bowl. It's a 3-tiered bowl, and like genuinely, I've never like, it was definitely a challenge for me. So like,
did you put more clay down, or did you form the inner bowls from the bowl?
Basically, yeah, it's all one clay at one time. And when I do center it finally and I open it up, I basically section off 3 parts. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then like I pull the outer layer, and then I pull the inner layer, and then I pull the middle layer up.
That seems like, yeah. I mean, I'm remembering back from when we did it together, and like, I feel like, at least from my memory of throwing it, you need a lot of clay to like pull upwards.
Yeah.
So to do that 3 times, like your thickness of this had to have been pretty thick.
It was a lot of clay. And like, if it helps you understand, I cut away a lot of this.
Yeah.
So like, imagine like this entire thing is like basically solid.
Yeah, like a bowl all around.
Basically. So it's like, it was a lot. And like, honestly, it kind of fits that I challenged myself to that degree, because like, I did want it to be a special piece, and like completing it successfully kind of meant a lot to me. But yeah, so like, honestly, like the journey, at least with this piece, the journey of the piece is just as important as like what it's supposed to represent, which is nice.
I mean, sure. I'm sure, like at this rate, you're gonna be throwing like bowls inside of bowls and bowls. Right?
Now that I know I can do that, it's over.
You unlock something.
You lit up skill on the skill tree.
Wow. And like, yeah, there's even these like little holes. And how do you do those? Like these inner holes in here? Is that just
was
pokes?
just like, poke. I got a hole puncher and I poked in. For this piece, I did want, like I said, I wanted to be bigger, but I wanted it to also function as like one of those hanging plant kind of things, where like you could put it on top of a shelf, have like the water at the bottom, and the plant kind of grows out of it and like hangs down.
Bro, what?
So like that was, but I don't think it's deep enough. I mean, when I get home, I'll definitely have
fire.
to and like see it. But like that was the idea, kind of like one of those vines that hangs up down.
They should commission. I would commission you to build a bigger one. Like
now that I
that's
can
fire.
do it, commission me. It's honestly really fun that like doing it too. So.
Huh. I would, because I would love to see what that use case looks like.
Yeah.
That's, I guess you answered my earlier question of like that intersection between the functional and the aesthetic. Like that's a perfect intersection.
I don't think like you'll ever get it with like cups or like plates and stuff.
None of this makes sense.
That stuff, yeah.
Wow. And for it to be a piece that also like carries so much meaning too, I think like you hit such an awesome trifecta there. Like, wow.
I
hope this like sits in your crib and like
it will.
brings you a lot of joy.
I pray that like the vines work. Like I'm really hoping. But even the placement of like the piece where, because like I said, this was completely not separate, but like it was separate from the collection. I was trying to figure out where I wanted to be, but I realized like kind of like what the poem says, where like the splash of the death was so sudden, and like you can prepare for it all you want, but like it's always gonna make you feel like you're never actually gonna be truly prepared for it. So in the way that it is sudden, like it doesn't really fit anywhere in the collection. And like it's because of that inherent nature of it being sudden, and like you just have to accept it and just keep going. So yeah, so
Wow. This is fire.
thank you.
Last but not least.
Final one.
I remember, like, I've seen this piece before the glazing was done, and I was really impressed then. But like seeing it now with the glazing on, it's like, wow, this is so sick. Talk me through this. Yeah. Because there's a lot to like take in. Like,
there's a lot. There's a lot going on. So this piece, to mirror kind of the first piece, which is called Me. This one is called Me Again. And this is essentially the culmination, or like not quite the climax, but kind of the climax of the story or of the journey that we're on. And this is the poem, so hold fast, my child. The steam cloaks more than just the mirror. Wipe it away and reach for your reflection. Blessed are the caterpillars who become butterflies. So this right here is kind of like, well, to talk, okay, honestly, we gotta break it down piece by piece, but like the look of the piece itself, I wanted it to be a coral because like continuing with like the water symbolism that's been going on, I wanted this to kind of be like where you are, you're at the bottom of the lake that you fell into, and like you see this coral, and this is kind of the coral that kind of represents like there's still life at the bottom of the ocean. You know, there's still life, because like to kind of akin like to relate it to like my mental state during all of like this past like semester and summer. I guess like I feel like I've been pretty depressed, but like the feeling of like depression isn't really like one you can like describe, and like almost it's kind of like being at the bottom of the ocean with just so much pressure on you at all sides, and it's just you just feel kind of constricted, or like in a way kind of constricted, and like it's weird because like I feel like I've felt like that like pretty much my entire life, but like I think at this point, especially with this piece, it's kind of like recognizing the fact that there is hope at a certain point. And like this coral itself, like even like the idea of like Great Barrier Reef symbolism, where like, you know, corals around the earth are dying out, and you know, like the fact that this is, I guess in my mind, a young budding coral kind of represents like the idea of like nurturing and like self-love and like basically pouring time and effort to nurture this to like adulthood essentially. So like, I guess the physicality of it and like what you can get from the physicality of it is like, you can grow and like you can keep going and like there is a light at the end of the tunnel almost. As for like the symbolism with like the poem and like the title, I think like it's an absolute mirror to the first one, because like even though the two lines of the two first lines of the poems, where the first one is let go my child, and then the last one is hold fast my child, it's kind of like emphasizing the two different points of like, I guess, grief or like reflection or kind of like, I guess, whatever I'm feeling. Whereas like one point, you're kind of like in despair of like the unknown, and like you kind of just don't know, and you're just letting go. But like at the end, it's like, okay, you've gone through all of this, you felt all of this, hold on, like you're gonna grow and everything. And like to continue on, like one of the lines is the steam cloaks more than just a mirror. And kind of like, it's talking about when you get out, like, you know how you get out of the shower and it's like, it's hella foggy and you can't really see. It's kind of like that distortion of your reflection almost. So like in the midst of all these thoughts and however much like all these emotions, like they're not only cloaking, they are the steam. So it's not like they're not just cloaking like your emotions, but they're like cloaking how you see yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
So like as like I'm kind of acknowledging, you know, wipe it away. See your like form your. I literally say like reach for your reflection at that point, because like in a sense you are like, after you wipe that steam away, you're able to create your reflection. You're able to see yourself for who you truly are. And like, I think that that's probably the most important part of like, I guess the grief / like process I've been going through like these past few months, where it's like you can feel all these type of ways, but you just have to acknowledge the fact that like it isn't necessarily you.
Yeah.
You know, like it can be layers on top of you, or it could be like, you know, distorting the reflection. Like a current within the lake is gonna distort the reflection. But it's not actually you. And you have to learn to kind of see it without all those distortions to see the true you. And then, but like going back to the first one where it's like, you know, you don't really know, when you don't know the true you, what do you do? And all you have to do is create it in a sense. So like, and that's where the last line comes in. I will say, I got like the idea from like a random comment on like this like article, but I just like, you know, I was like, oh damn, that's like a cool saying. So shout out them. But yeah, blessed are the caterpillars who become butterflies. That really like stuck to me, because it's like, you know, you have to go through that like metamorphosis to really become who you truly are supposed to be. You know.
I'm like actually lost for words. I feel like this is such a big like undertaking of a story that you tried to tell with this collection. I feel like I sat through like an audiobook. Like this is 10 out of 10. Audiobook. Like book coming soon, I guess.
But no, for sure. I think what's important to note about all of it, and looking back on it, like I said, this is not like a full-fledged choral, I guess, in my eyes. You know, like it's at its very first stages of growth. And like, I don't want to have this collection kind of come off as like enlightened or having a reflection, or like I'm so pure now, because like it's not. Like I said, like I feel all of these things still consistently, you know. you still feel depressed, you still feel kind of like sad sometimes, you still feel like you want to do whatever the fuck you want, but like it's all noise, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've developed the ability to see your thoughts clearly.
Mm-hmm.
You've developed that ability to, I guess, see the steam in the room, to know that you can clear some of that steam out when you do feel those thoughts coming your way that may be negative, may be positive, but at least allowing yourself to see who you are.
Yeah.
You've created who you are at face value.
Yeah.
And I think like there's beautiful imagery here of like the person you've created is impacted by a lot of these like things along the way. It's impacted by your father's memory, it's impacted by experience with substances and whatnot, but at the end of the day, like you are you, and that remains true despite how all of these things may be weighing on you, maybe the steam in the room, and your ability to, I guess, clear that out of your head and see who you are, and keep that as that hope, that growing coral, that like continuing to nurture that, continuing to develop who you are. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I think that's like probably the biggest thing about it, honestly, because like I said, it's not like I'm past all of this, you know, and you still feel like I said, you still feel all these emotions constantly, and I got a long way to go. You know, I'm not the butterfly. I'm the caterpillar. So it's like I'm currently heading into the stage of the metamorphosis, but I just have to keep in mind that like not to let too many outside factors relate to it. Yeah.
There's like, I mean, no notes. Like, I don't have too much more to like add on top of that. Like, you really killed the delivery of your vision, and like you've executed the physical really well. You put it into words, like you put it into audio too. I guess that's something that we didn't experience.
Yeah, the audio is
But
definitely.
I got it. I can't wait.
It'll be on the website and the exhibit. Yeah. But
wow.
Yeah, honestly, like this is really. It's been really fun to go through all of this, because like at a certain points as I'm talking about each one of the pieces, it's like I'm kind of transported back to when I was making them, and like what I was going through at those times. So it's like looking back, I'm right now, like even though I'm not step 10 of my growth, you know, I'm probably on step 2, but like I made it from step 1 to step 2, you know. So it's one of those things, and like with the mixed media things, I think learning new mediums and like learning how to convey my emotions into different mediums has also been a completely new undertaking. Like it's like crazy how like what you can do with like audios, like visuals and stuff like that, and like even writing poetry and just being more in tune with yourself. It's all given me better ways to talk to myself and like to really communicate with like how I feel. Because like I think that's probably something that I also like really I would say struggle with, because like as someone who doesn't know how to communicate a lot of their thoughts effectively, I think a lot of it is also chalked up to like me not being able to communicate with myself kind of efficiently. And like kind of learning these mediums gave me a better way, or gave me access to more languages that I could talk to myself.
I feel like that's like something I do believe is like people have some kind of inherent creativity that they're trying to, I guess, portray in different ways. The pottery is just one way that I think your mind is like taken to, and you know, like people have their things they like to do, but it doesn't mean that's like the only way that you're creative. Who knows? Like maybe you might be like a really great like that's something else. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all just an effort to like kind of communicate a little bit of who we are. I feel like we've probably talked about this before, of like your art that you do is like a form of like self-actualization of like
it's you. It's part of you, and like
you're trying to convey who you are, and there's 1,000 ways to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice, man, and like you said, I mean, I think going forward, which has also been like really fun to think about, is that like I also have really enjoyed just writing poems. Like I have like so many other poems, like not even to do with this type of stuff, but like just writing. So it's like maybe I'll just like start doing that as well. And it's like I don't need to do just pottery. Now I have something new. Like
I think that like definitely don't stop the podcast.
oh yeah, I'm not stopping.
I'm investing at year 6. But I do think that I think something I'm really excited to see is this exhibit happen, because I do want to experience all those different modes in the same place. I think that's going to add a lot of dimensionality to your work. I think even just us talking about it here, adding in that, like hearing what you felt, your stories, has added a lot of dimensionality to it. So I mean, I can only imagine seeing everything all together in just one place.
Yeah, it'll really be like special, because like even talking about it, like I can see like the emotion, and, like I can feel it, but like it really does add, you know, when you're like hearing the audio, you're looking at the piece, and you're reading it, and it just adds to it. But like, until the exhibit, the website, the website.
What's the website?
zhampton.com. We'll subtitle it, but no, for sure. Like, and like, I think I definitely, from now on, I'm always just gonna be doing mixed media stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, whether like it might not be like audios and videos and stuff like that, but I think for sure poems. Really like, I really fuck with writing poems. I like writing.
You're good.
Yeah.
when you showed me, I only heard the first like the one about Let's Dance Until Sunday on that day I went with you to the pottery studio. And like that was my first time I even knew that you did pottery, and I knew that you did poetry, and I was like, wow, like I stop it.
Yeah. So, man, it was honestly like this whole collection has been great. It's like I'm glad it's over, cause like I'm on stage 6 right now, where it's like I'm ready to like do stuff, you know. I'm ready to go abroad and like see the world. Copenhagen 2026. I cannot wait. New experiences. I'm coming back with like so many ideas for another collection. Like that summer, you will see another collection. Wait, I'm not gonna say that. I don't want to put a date on anything yet, because it does take time, you know. Like, but like, I'm excited, but for now, like, I'm cool off the potty. I'm just letting life ride for a bit, you know.
You're going to Copenhagen to do architecture.
Architecture is my main thing when I'm over there. But best believe I will be going into the art scene in Copenhagen, and like the pottery, not just pottery, concerts, poetry nights, whatever I can get my hands on. Right now I feel like a sponge that has like, you squeeze out all the water, and now I'm ready to absorb it.
I mean, you finished what is like a really great character arc for yourself, and like I think at the end of this character arc, you're gonna be at the start of another arc.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
That's the best thing about it. Exactly. It's like it's not done. It's just beginning. And it only gets better from here.
Really?
It will get better from here. It will get better from here.
Anyway, thanks again for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for explaining this collection. I enjoy really going through the process of like hearing the stories, and I think everyone else would too. So yeah, props to you, man.
So you're like talking about this idea of being calm.
Shout out for like that crazy camera.
That was good, bro. Wait, I was low-key geeked when he started playing Say So Sass. I was like, no, he got it on deck.